well, welcome everybody. Welcome to another Mollie Stone's virtual cheese event. I am your host, Chelsea Fordiani, and I am the cheese manager at our Sausalito location, as well as the resident certified cheese professional. And I am broadcasting from actually our Green Bay location in our beautiful experience room. I'm very excited about that. And because of that, I made a giant tomato for my hair. Look at that. That's fantastic. So again, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. We are featuring Nicasio Valley Cheese Company. And with me, I have Rick Lafranchi, who is the partner and head of sales and marketing for Nicasio Valley, and also one of my favorite people. So welcome, Rick. It's nice to have you with us.
Yeah, thanks so much for including me, Chelsea. I really appreciate it. Great to be here.
Wonderful. So before we start rolling into this, just a few little house cleaning things. I know that questions are going to come up. So if you have a question, please feel free to ask as we go. It really helps fuel the conversation. But when you ask your question, please write it in the Q&A box. Please do not write it in the chat box because people like to chatter in the chat box. I did find that with the last tasting, we had people who are, having conversations in there, which is great. But if you put your question in there, it's going to get lost amongst the conversation. So please put your question in the Q&A box. Type it in there. We'll bring it up and we'll answer as we go along. I'm doing some multitasking here. I also have Tim, our IT director, helping me out field these questions. So hopefully we get to everybody's question. And if we don't, for some reason, get to your question, you can always email us afterwards at catering@molliestones.com. And I'll go over that afterwards. So yeah, let's do this. All right, Rick, introduce us to the wonderful world of Nicasio Valley cheese.
Okay. Well, again, thanks so much for inviting me to be a part of your program today. I owe a great deal of our success to Mollie Stones. That was the first chain we were associated with, and we'll forever be grateful to Patricia Jordan for inviting us to come aboard, and for you and your staff and Michelle and everybody for all the support you've given us over the years. Can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you. I remember when you guys first came on. I was just starting out as a cheesemonger myself, and it's been really cool seeing you guys grow as a company in the cheese industry, as we've moved along. And yeah, Patricia is an amazing woman. For our customers at home who don't know, Patricia Jordan is the director of the deli, bakery, and cheese departments for Mollie Stones, and my supervisor. And I am very fortunate to have her. She really is fantastic. I would not be standing here in front of you doing all of this and talking all about cheese without her support and her guidance. So yes, I have to agree with you, Rick.
Yeah, no, wonderful. Well, great. Where I'd like to start is where we are. The part of the country we're in is the North Bay, which I consider Marin and Sonoma County. And the North Bay, especially in particular Marin, was the original dairy capital of California. And the dairy started here back in the early 1850s. Not by accident. Marin and Southern Sonoma County have unique terroirs that are conducive to producing a high quality prairie grass that's considered some of the finest pastures in the world. And so it was appropriate that the dairies would start in this area because it was just a longer grazing season. The grasses were sustainable, and they could also grow feed as well. Back in the day, there was no option to buy feed. You had to grow whatever you had for your animals as well as pasture them for the rest of it. And so it was imperative to have a great neighborhood. If you notice today, even often you'll hear rain starting in the North Bay. Well, that's why we have that higher rainfall than, South Bay, East Bay, most other parts of the Bay Area. They just can't compete with that. So consequently, the dairies were here, and also because of their proximity by water to San Francisco. In those days, there weren't any roads, and so it made sense to transport everything by barge or boat. And so consequently, Marin was very conducive to that. The first dairy started primarily on the Point Reyes Peninsula as early as 1852, and that was considered cow heaven because it has a moderate Mediterranean style climate that was, again, like I say, conducive to sustainable ag. So very fortunate to be a part of it. anyway, it was a great sustainable dairy region for generations. And our family, our story starts kind of around 1910 when our grandfather, Fredolino Lafranchi, immigrated from the little village of Maggia, Switzerland, came to America with some friends, and first started out working for his uncle, Riccioli, who owned what's now the McAvoy Olive Oil Company ranch there on the way to Petaluma on Red Hill. That's where he started out at. Worked there for a few years to kind of pay off his passage, and then went out doing different things. And in 1918, he landed on our ranch in Nicasio. First, he went to work for his future brother-in-law and sister-in-law in some form of a partnership. I'm not sure how that worked. In 1919, he took over the business. And in 1920, he married my grandmother, Zelma Dulcini Lafranchi. And together they ran a dairy that is still in business today. We're very proud that last year, or I guess it was the summer of 1919, we celebrated our 100th anniversary. So it was quite a milestone day for all of us. We had friends and relatives from all over the world who were there. Anyway, so my grandparents operated the ranch. My grandmother passed away before I was born. Never met her. My grandfather operated the dairy until about 1960, when my dad's generation took over, and they operated again a successful dairy up until my dad passed away in 2002. Our ranch consists of about 1,150 organic acres. It's actually two ranches. There's the home ranch that my grandfather originally settled on, and then there's the ranch where our creamery is today. That ranch was purchased in 1985, along with the cooperation of Malt, the Marin Agricultural Land Trust. Malt, bought the development rights for the ranch. We bought the agricultural rights and the right to operate and own the property itself. The property can never be developed. It's a permanent conservation easement in perpetuity. And but that's what we were hoping to get to buy it for its development potential was just prohibitively expensive. So we were able to, like I say, partner with Malt and take over the ranch. Back in the day when I was a kid, Nicasio was considered very vulnerable to potential development. I can vividly recall when I was about 5 or 6 years old, my uncle telling me, "Rick, someday this will all be houses." Well, that was a long, long time ago. And today that has never happened. And in large part, that is because of Malt. In the late 60s, the Marin County plan had extensive development throughout all of West Marin, including Nicasio. Nicasio is going to be bisected by 3 different freeways. And the West Marin, like the east shore of Tomales Bay and that area over there, was going to be home to somewhere around 100,000 people. So it was going to be quite a San Jose type of communities. And what happened is a young man named Peter Aragoni got elected to the Marin County Board of Supervisors at that time, and beat what had been a 3-2 vote in favor of development, turning it to a 3-2 vote against development. And they withdrew from the state highway system, and that stopped it. There was call for a freeway to become overland from San Rafael through San Anselmo through Fairfax out here all the way to Point Reyes, as well as another one from Lucas Valley was going to come, and another one from the Petaluma, Nevada direction. And so that stopped all that, took away the need for development. But then what happened next was they wanted to preserve agriculture and preserve the large land holdings that were out here. So they instituted A60 zoning, thinking that would do the trick. But most ranching families are large. There's usually 4, 5, 6 kids. And at some point, there has to come a day of reckoning where everybody has a share of the ranch, and they need to realize the benefit of that. And so in Nicasio, for example, between 1960 and 1980, 9 of the 23 ranches in the community were split up into those 60-acre parcels. And you'll see it today when you come into Nicasio, look up in the hills, and you'll see a sprinkling of houses up there. And consequently, the viability of agriculture disappeared along with that, as well as when the Nicasio Dam came in and took away a number of other ranches as well. So with that, agriculture again was very threatened in Marin. There were for sale signs all over, and 2 very courageous and visionary ladies, Ellen Strauss and Phyllis Faber, opted to go another direction and create the Marin Agricultural Land Trust, which is Malt. And since they started, they're celebrating 40 years this year, they've preserved I think it's 85 or 86 family ranches have now been preserved from development forever. And they've protected over 54,000 acres. So they've done a phenomenal job. And
That is
really
absolutely phenomenal. I
made
mean,
this all
amazing.
possible. Yeah,
That is, yeah,
without
I
them,
mean, just, sorry, just thinking about, how much agriculture there is up there. I mean, just not just the dairies, not just the cheesemakers, but also, the oysters that are up there, the cattle ranches. I mean, you name it. There's so much up there, and it's so beautiful too. I mean, we wouldn't have any of that if it wasn't for malt.
yeah, no, so we're very fortunate, and they've had a huge impact on this area. Without them, it would be all split up into smaller parcels because very few families could have sustained it without, selling. So we're very grateful for that and for all they did. Our ranch last year, or about 2 years ago, we had a carbon farm plan generated to make sure we're well aware of the best possible practices to utilize on our ranch to enhance the soil, preserve the terroir, and just maximize the potential and opportunity from the land that we have. On the ranch, we have several uses. We have the home dairy, we have our cheese company. There's also a pumpkin patch here in October. We have a compost operation in association with West Marin Compost that takes our cow waste and combines it with local green and equestrian waste and creates a finished product that's a very rich soil addition amendment. And we use that to fertilize our fields. And then they also sell a lot of it off to the general public. And we also have a small quarry. So there's a combination of things that it takes to make the whole operation work. On our dairy, currently we're milking about 500 certified organic cows. We have what's called a closed herd, which means we haven't had any outside animals introduced to our herd now in somewhere around 40 years. And we do that because we want to prevent any potential diseases that our cows haven't been exposed to of being introduced into the herd and creating problems. So every animal that milks on our ranch grew up on our ranch. And we feel that's been a real good fit for us. We're organic. We've been organic since about 2006. We were, a conventional herd before that. And the organic opportunity came along, and it just makes sense with what we're doing. As you all know, the organic is about the environment, and the key to success in North Bay agriculture is your terroir. We're not, big factory dairies like you have in the Central Valley, where the cows are on either dirt or concrete their entire life. Here, the grass is the key to success. And so it only made sense, us along with many, many, many other North Bay dairies transitioned to organic. Between 2006 and 2014, there was probably somewhere around 50 plus dairies that went from being conventional dairies to organic dairies. We utilize sustainable practices on the dairy. The cows, we utilize rotational grazing. We spread, like I say, the compost created on the ranch. We also overseed. Another thing we do with our milk is we ship our milk to Clover and Clover Sonoma, and we feel that's a really productive partnership. Clover, as you may know, has the highest quality standards in the dairy industry, second to none. And we like being a part of that because that demands our milk is the absolute highest quality it can be. And therefore, it satisfies their needs, also helps us to make a higher quality cheese. So we've been with Clover since about that 2006. Again, all waste generated both here at the creamery and on the ranch is recycled. Currently, we're studying the possibility of transitioning all of our operations to a solar-based power generating system. Still working on that one. It's going to take some time. And then the other thing is, and arguably the thing we're probably most proud of, is the relationship we've enjoyed with our staff all these years. We have probably 20 workers between the ranch and the creamery, and we have several people no longer working, retired now, but that have worked with us for over 50 years. And so we're very grateful for that and very proud of the relationship we enjoy with our Latino working community. They've been terrific. Our goal in doing the cheese company and all was to continue our ranch for future generations. The one thing that's really important to us is that to make a viable operation here where the next generation will be attracted to participating in that. And that was one big reason for transitioning from conventional to organic. And it was also to kind of continue on with the commitment we've always had to the sustainability of the operation and making that work. It was really important, not only to be sustainable from an environmental standpoint, but to also observe the highest level of humane treatment for our animals. And then, of course, the respect for our staff is all really important. Our ultimate goal is to continue the ag legacy of our family, this particular community of Nicasio and all of Marin County. Um, the reason why we got into the cheese business was, well, I'll start from the beginning with that. Back in 1973, as a family, we made our first trip to the little village of Maggia, Switzerland, where my grandfather came from. It was my dad's first time there since he was about 7 years old. And during that trip, we were having some local cheeses at our aunt's house. And I can still remember my father observing, he said, wouldn't it be one day to make these cheeses on our Nicasio ranch? And they were unlike any cheese I'd experienced at that time, although granted, my cheese experience was very limited, but still, they were exceptional. And in 2002, we kind of listened to them and filed it away, but really didn't act on it until 2002 when Dad passed away. And the dairy industry, the conventional dairy industry in California, had, over the course of the 80s and 90s, had experienced tremendous peaks and valleys in pricing for their milk products. There'd be one year you'd have a great year, then the next 2 years it'd be horrible, and whatever you made the first year, you'd give it back the next two. And at that time, when he passed, we were experiencing another one of those deep, long valleys, and we felt we really had to do something else, or some addition to what we already were doing in order to sustain the ranch in the long term. And at that time, that was shortly after Point Reyes had started up, and Cowgirl had been, going along with quite a lot of success for a few years. And we thought this kind of makes sense, that maybe this is something we need to explore to see if we can add a line of cheeses to an already vibrant cheese making region. And in 2004, we were back in Maggia for the first time since '73. Again, experienced the cheeses of that part of the world, really liked them, and were able to meet the cheesemaker, Maurizio Lorenzetti. And over the course of the next few years, with the big help of our cousin in Switzerland, Gabriele Macaronelli, who's our Swiss-Italian cousin liaison, he was able to pair us up with Maurizio. So in 2007, we spent 3 weeks over there making cheese with Maurizio. At the end of the visit, we knew two things. One, we wanted to make the type of cheeses he made there because we felt they were somewhat different than what others were doing here. And number two, we hoped that he would help us get started by coming over here. We were fearful that he'd say, no, I'm not interested. But it took him about a half a second to say, absolutely, yes, I'll be there. When do you want me? We thought it would be the next year, 2008. It actually turned out to be January 31st, 2010. Maurizio arrived. We started making cheese a few weeks later. And so since that time, we've developed a line of, we have about, I guess there's about 9 different cheeses we make. We're very proud of the fact that every one of our cheeses has won either state or national awards, and they're all modeled on recipes that we got from Maurizio. And the first one we're going to start with today is our Foggy Morning.
So I'm just going to pause you right there, Rick. And first, because I want to go over how we're going to go about the tasting. And also, a number of you have purchased the tasting kit that goes along with this from Mollie Stones. If you haven't, you still can, and I will let you know how all that information of how you can get a kit after this event is over. So in your kit, you should have gotten this really fantastic little Nicasio Valley cooler tote. So thank you, Rick, for those.
You're welcome.
We also have the Rustic Bakery olive oil and celery bites, Columbus prosciutto, Friends and Jam Pinot cherries, which are phenomenal. They also make really good Manhattans. They don't just go with cheese. Marcona almonds, Panforte Bianco, which is kind of like an Italian fruit cake. It's very, very tasty, very spicy, aromatic. And then, of course, the cheeses. And so I have them going from right to left. We're going to start with the Foggy Morning, which is this one here. This is going to be the mildest out of all of them. Then we've got the Loma Alta, and then we also have the Locarno, which you can see my Locarno is just oozing out. It looks absolutely gorgeous. I'm very excited about that one. And then the Nicasio Valley Tomino. So yeah, and then when we are going through the tasting, before you just start shoving it in your mouth, first take a moment, use your senses when tasting the cheese. Look at it, smell it. You can also, you're feeling the texture, not, and with your fingers if you want to, and then also when you taste it, taste what that texture is. And what we've also included in our kit are two things to write down your notes in. One is this Formacticum cheese log, which has this little wheel in here. And if you're like, oh, what does that taste like? There are actually little descriptions of the flavors that you can look at, and it'll help you, figure out what it is exactly you're tasting. And then we also included this, the Mollie Stone's tasting notes that go with it. So we've got each cheese, and then again, aromas, flavors, and textures. And then also you can, if you want to, try some of your other items in there to pair with them, you can circle which ones you like that went best with what cheese. And also all the information, about our catering and our social media, all that's down here as well. So you've got a lot of information on this sheet. Awesome. All right, Rick. So let's dive into it.
Okay, so Foggy Morning is the first cheese we ever made, and the one that we were obviously extremely apprehensive about when we tasted it for the first time. Why it was the first cheese was because it's ready to eat after 4 days. So it doesn't really ripen. It just kind of goes from the cow to the vat to the tub to the mold, and is made over, like I say, a 2-day period, and then dries for a couple of days and gets wrapped and on its way. And anyway, it's a fromage blanc style cheese, which means white cheese. Basically, it's considered like a more delicate cream cheese style, and what we find is it's creamy but with a tang. And it's a 6-time national award winner. Real proud of that. The name Foggy Morning came from actually my mother and my niece, and they were talking about it one morning when the niece was visiting, and were thinking about a name for it. And then they thought about, well, what experience does this make us feel like we're having? And it was reminiscent to them of that. You step outside on a frosty, foggy morning, and it's kind of like that first breath of air that you get when you step out, and it does kind of have that. It's kind of an interesting cheese in that regard, and like I say, it's one also that pairs well with just about anything. You're really, the main limitation on that is your imagination. It pairs well with pizza, pasta, salads. We'll see later on. I've got it spread on a baguette, drizzled with a little olive oil and cracked pepper, along with a glass of Sauvignon Blanc, is really nice. You can slice it, you can spread it, you can crumble it. And like we like to say, it's great morning, noon, or night. So it's just a mild cheese. It's not going to overwhelm you, but it does have a little tang to it.
No, it's really lovely. I really love the texture and that's the one thing. The different textures of your cheeses are fantastic. But yeah, if you're tasting along with us, you can definitely taste that slight tang there right at the end. And it's nice and creamy, but not like pasty creamy. It's got that fluffiness that fromage blanc usually has. It's really, really pleasant cheese and awesome to pair other things with.
Terrific. And then the next cheese, and actually I'll just show you the Foggy Morning quickly, the little piece I have here, just so you know, and the label, so you can
Yes,
recognize.
thank you. Yes.
Okay.
Which is the label that's on the bags as well.
Right. Exactly. So then next up we have our Loma Alta. I'll show you a picture of that. That's made in 8-inch wheels, and it's what you call it, a bloomy rind cheese. So
Yes.
it's a distant cousin of brie, but not a brie. And Loma Alta, is named after the second highest hill in Nicasio. If you go over Lucas Valley Road, where you get right opposite Big Rock, that the hills there that's considered Loma Alta. And we tried to give some of our cheeses local names, and so that was kind of the rationale behind that one. It's made in 8-inch, 4-pound wheels. We age it for about 3 weeks before we bring it to market. When we were first introduced to it by Maurizio, he suggested that it's ready at 10 days, best at, I think it was 15 or 20, and done by 30. And what we found was actually, yeah, it's edible at those earlier dates, but actually it really starts to develop flavor for us here in California at around 40 days. And Maurizio believes that's owed to the quality of the milk we use to make the cheese. He feels that in Switzerland, when he makes cheese over there, he buys cans, that get trucked across the country, and they're 3 or 4 days old by the time they get into his vat. Whereas our milk, we finish milking about 7:30 in the morning, and by 8 o'clock, the milk's in the vat here. The cheese making has started, so we can't use any better, fresher milk than what we have available using the milk made on our dairy. And so anyway, so Loma Alta, what I found is it starts off quiet and then it has a really nice nutty finish to it. And so it's a pleasant cheese. It's not certainly something that's going to make your eyes water or your nose run, but it's something that's very enjoyable. It's also a very stable cheese. If you're doing a cheese board or have an event going on that you need the cheese to sit out for some hours, it's not going to come apart on you. It's going to hold together very nicely. And like I say, as it warms up, it develops more flavor, a pleasant flavor, never a strong flavor. And I think the flavors you'll see of our cheeses are such that that part of the world, their food generally is relatively mild but flavorful. They're not into real spicy dishes, or it's all based on kind of just a pleasant, enjoyable flavor. And so the Loma Alta certainly falls into that category. It's great with fruit. It's great melted. It's also goes well with white wine and light to medium reds. It's also a multiple national and state award winner. So it's had a lot of critical recognition over the years. Um, Next up, Locarno.
That's awesome. So if you see, I'm going to pick this up here as it's kind of sticking to the board, but I really love the texture of it, and because it's got kind of a spongy texture. That also, I don't know if you can see on the camera. Well, if you look at the piece of cheese that you have at home, you'll see the little holes there. Those are what we call in the industry islets, and it adds a really lovely little, look and texture to the cheese. And the rind on it adds that really nice earthiness to it. And this does come up now. All of the rinds are edible with these cheeses, with the exception of the Foggy Morning, because that is a rindless cheese. There's no rind on that. But you can definitely eat the rinds on this cheese, and I feel as though they add to the cheese's flavor. But some people don't like rind. There are rind eaters and non-rind eaters, and that's okay. It doesn't make you less sophisticated if you don't like the taste of rind. But I really think the rind adds something to it. And also taste the cheese with and without the rind, because then you can see the difference there in the flavors that you're finding with the cheese.
Great. Okay. So next up is Locarno, and that's our 3-inch round, our brie style, and it looks like this. When it's beginning out, it's a real white cheese, and Locarno is named after the Swiss city nearest to Maggia. So no Locarno. If you go to Switzerland and ask for a Locarno cheese, you're going to have a hard time finding it, because as far as I know, there is none. It's just the name we gave this particular style of brie. We make it in either 3-inch rounds or 8-inch wheels. It's a unique brie style in that it ripens from the inside of the rind through the tangy, chalky middle. When it's young, it's almost all chalk with just a thin layer of cream on the inside of the rind. And as it ages, that chalk turns to cream. And that chalk also turns to cream when it's in your mouth. So it really has a nice, I don't know, earthiness, or how you describe it.
It's kind of mushroomy. That's how I would describe it.
Okay.
Mine's super ripe right now, as you can see. It's just, it's spilling out, and it's absolutely gorgeous. So you get that really creamy triple cream butter, but as it ages, it definitely develops a more meaty mushroominess to it. It's fantastic. This is something you eat with a spoon at this point. But that's another thing that I wanted to note is your cheeses, the way they age is fantastic. When they're young, they're delicious, and as they get older, they really develop a really nice flavor. So I also encourage our guests, try cheeses at their different ages, and you can see the difference between them. It's really interesting, and that's a good way to develop your palate as well. Because I do say often to people, cheeses are a lot like mushrooms. You kind of need to know how they are at different stages to know what they taste like, and also, well, no cheese is poisonous, hopefully, but again, it's like in the mushroom world, you just have to know how they are.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing with the Locarno that I like is if you squeeze it and it's real firm, that means it's young. And so you're going to get that experience of the thin layer of cream with the large chalky, which I like. I like it when it's about 2/3 cream to 1/3 chalk. I feel like that's a real good combination. But then as it gets older, if you squeeze and it's kind of squishy and soft, still good. The big thing
It,
there though is to cut the top off and spoon it.
oh,
Like that,
totally.
and
Now,
so it still
Rick,
has
we do
service.
have a couple questions here. The first one is from Mike Moyle. Hi, Mike. What determines how large a wheel is made?
The mold you put the milk in, the finished product, the curds into. And so it's just like we have 3-inch molds, we have 8-inch molds, and we have 12-inch molds. And so depending on the cheese, if it's a larger mold, that usually means that you're going to age the cheese longer. The 3-inch molds go to the foggy mornings, the brie styles, the cheeses that are going to be ready for market likely in less than a month. And then the larger molds, usually it's a cheese that you're going to age longer, like our Nicasio Reserve or our San Geronimo, are the two that fall into that category. And we try to age those for a minimum of 60 days. So there's quite a difference there. And then the in between, the 8-inch wheels would be the Loma Altas, the Halleck Creeks. I feel like, well, Locarno, that those are all kind of in between, that ideally they're ready somewhere close to 30 days. And it's just kind of that style of cheese that's kind of historically gone in that direction. You're not going to make, or at least with our bries at this point, we're not going to make them in a 12-inch wheel. Although if you go, I'm sure there's bries that are made in large wheels,
Yeah, this is
for
true.
that matter.
Yeah.
So, it just kind of, that's how we do it. That's probably a lot to do with how Maurizio does it, because we kind of followed his lead on that. And we've stayed fairly close to that over the years, tweaked things a bit, but primarily followed that. So, yeah, I mean, it's just kind of the tradition of the cheese. The foggy morning, I've seen it over there where it's done in a sausage maker, where it's almost tubed like a chev, because it does have the kind of the
Yeah, well,
consistency and the how would you call it, the structure of
it's
that.
malleable
And,
like that. So
yeah, and
yeah,
so the flavor of cow, is how
yeah.
I
I
very
mean,
simple.
not to get too technical, but there are cheeses out there they're legally protected cheeses, and we'll do a segment on that subject matter. But there are cheeses out there, for instance, like Camembert de Normandy is a legally protected cheese. No other cheese can be sold under that name because it has to follow very specific guidelines, and that includes the size of the wheel, and also including where the milk is from. So there are, yes, indeed, cheeses that have to be a certain size or certain shape in order to be called what they are. So yeah, we can totally expand on that one day, or if you come into Sausalito, I can always talk about that. That's always a fun subject to discuss. We do have another question from Joyce Courtney. She asks, once you cut open the Locarno, how long will it last in the refrigerator, and do you need to finish it quickly? Now, my experience with a cheese like this, well, one, it depends on how old it is, I guess, or how long it's been aged. With a piece like mine, you should eat that right away because it's at the end of its lifespan, I would say. It would probably hold up maybe a few days in your refrigerator, but again, when it looks like that, definitely try to consume the whole thing, which is not a bad thing. But if it was younger, I would say, a week, maybe a week and a half at most, but it would definitely last at least a week in your refrigerator. Would you agree, Rick?
I would agree with that. Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, if it's firm, it will last for a while, but it's a relatively small round to begin with. So hopefully you can polish it off, or you'll want to polish it off quickly, is the goal. But if if it's getting softer, then it should be consumed, sooner rather than later. I would suggest as soon as possible. So yeah.
Awesome.
And then, like I said, with the Locarno, it pairs well with fruit, with crackers of all type, spread on a baguette. Also great. All the cheeses go very well with charcuterie. That's one of the traditions of the Swiss Italian, and I'm sure the Italian, is that your cheese is not by itself. You usually have, baguette, French bread, something like that along with it, as well as a variety of charcuterie, and there's so many wonderful Italian salamis and whatnot that they really enhance the overall experience, of course, along with a good bottle of wine. So next up, we have our Tomino,
Yes.
which is, I'll show you first of all, that's the blue label for us. And that cheese is a style of cheese made in Switzerland, and it's a 3-inch round. And this is what it looks like. And you'll see this is a relatively young piece here. It's only roughly about 3 weeks old. And when Tomino is first ready for consumption, it's white. And as it ages, as you'll see, this one's starting to develop a little bit of color. And it's white and it's mild, actually. And as it ages, it gets oranger and oranger over the course of the next 60 or so days. And at the end of its life, it's very orange and very funky. I like it at about 50 days old. I feel like that's when you get the best of both worlds, because you get a good full flavor, but again, not an overpowering flavor. But then as it gets further out towards the end of its life, it can get pretty funky. And so it satisfies those of us who like something with a real bold, strong flavored cheese. Like I say, this one here, I really like that it pairs well with craft brews. It's great with beer or your different IPAs and things like that. It goes along with those very well. And it's a cheese kind of we've been making it now for about 4 or 5 years, I guess, and it's gaining more and more popularity as people experience it. And I think you have to really experience it to appreciate it, to
Oh
know
yeah,
about.
definitely. I do have to say the Tomino is my favorite of the Nicasio Valley cheeses. And this piece that I have, it's like perfectly plush right now. I don't know if you can see that really on camera, but it just like, you just squeeze it a little bit and it's like a pillow. It's awesome. And the flavor it's meaty, it's slightly buttery. And then the rind is my favorite on this one. It really adds to it. It's got this great earthy nuttiness to it that it really pairs very well with the buttery, meaty paste. So yeah, if sometimes I often get the question, what is your favorite cheese? Well, Nicasio Valley the Tomino is one of them, because I have several. So that, yeah.
As you should.
So yeah, that's
Okay.
fabulous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So great. So those are the 4 cheeses that I have today.
Awesome.
And yeah.
Oh, let's see, we've got 2 questions here. Okay, so let's see, another one from Mike Moyle. Are any of these cheeses from the Ticino area that are available here in the US?
Any of the cheeses that are made in the Ticino region available here? Am I
I
hearing
don't
that
know.
right?
I can't say that I carry any. Yeah, so I honestly do not know the answer to that question. I would assume if they are, you would probably be able to find them. I mean, it would depend on how the cheese is made, because that's another thing too. There are lots of European cheeses that we cannot carry here in the United States because of legal reasons. They're like specifically like raw cheeses, for instance. We cannot carry any raw cheeses that are aged, that are rather not aged over 60 days. So that's like one thing. So that hopefully that helps maybe a little, but I know I don't carry any. And then we've got another question. Do all these cheeses come from the same cow? Thank you, Joe Bear. Joe Bear is one of my friends.
Okay. The same type of cow. Where our
Yes.
herd is all 100% Holstein. So it's all Holstein milk.
Awesome. Okay, so not one cow, but many
Right.
cows that are all part of the same closed herd.
Right.
Well, additionally, I just want to, because there also the question comes up about wine pairings with the cheeses. And I actually was going to recommend actually the wines that we showcase this month for the virtual wine tasting that we have. We also do that too if you're interested in wine. This month was Bravium, and I got the chance to try their Chardonnay and their Rosé, and they actually both of them would pair very nicely with all these cheeses across the board. So we do sell these at Mollie Stone's. All you have to do is ask the wine manager where they're located. But they're really lovely. Both are very, very crisp. The Chardonnay, it has this really lovely aroma to it as you open it up. It's only slightly buttery. It's more crisp than it is buttery. And then the Rosé is like a fresh basket of strawberries. Really, really gorgeous. So yeah, well, thank you for that tasting. That was fantastic. I hope you guys at home enjoyed that as well. And also, I wanted to showcase the Foggy Morning a little bit more because it is a very versatile cheese. And usually in January, people don't eat that much cheese because after the holidays, everybody wants to go on a diet, and cheese is probably the last thing on the list. But I have noticed that has not been happening, specifically on the weekends when football is taking place. So what I thought would be a great idea is to share our favorite things to do with Foggy Morning, because it does make a great appetizer, especially in this climate where we can only, be at home with our family or immediate friends and just small groups. It's a great size for small entertaining, and you can do so much with it. So like a lot of things that I enjoy pairing with it. Well, one, of course, are the Pinot cherries that we've included in your kit. A great thing to do is just spread it on one of the crackers or a baguette and then pop one of those cherries on top. You could also just set the round out and dump the cherries on top. That works too. Or if you want to put more legwork into it, you can chop up the cherries and put them on top. It's also really good with smoked salmon, dill, capers on a bagel or pumpernickel bread. Any kind of jam works with this cheese. Fig jam is very, very popular. Also pepper jam, hot pepper jelly, and also rose hip jam, which is something that I've quite taken a liking to. It's very, very kind of berry-like. Also pomegranate seeds or fresh figs when they're in season, pop those on top and then drizzle a little bit of honey on top. That's always a lovely presentation. Roasted green chilies or olive tapenade if you want to have something a bit more savory. Also really good in stuffed French toast with cinnamon and a little bit of maple syrup. That makes for a really nice decadent breakfast. And of course, you can add it into scrambled eggs or frittata, and it really makes it nice and fluffy and creamy. So those are some of my suggestions. What about you, Rick? What are some of your suggestions? Did we lose him? Oh. Oh, did we lose Rick? Oh no. Okay, well, I can keep on talking because I actually, Tim's going to work on getting Rick back, is what he's going to do. Meanwhile, I'm going to share you my favorite way of serving Foggy Morning, and I got all fancy with this. I've got these cool little pockets in here to hide stuff with. So I've got this piece of Foggy Morning here. So this is what it looks like, this whole piece there. And then I have some chopped pistachios and some chopped dates and some cardamom and some honey for cheese, which I also offer in my department. And so what I like to do is I'll sprinkle the chopped pistachios on top and also on the board too, because that also makes for a very nice presentation. And then also the dates, those go on top. This combination also works very well on oatmeal, I discovered. Something a little different. A really nice mixture of textures here too. That's another thing too, when you're thinking about what you can do with Foggy Morning, think about the different textures that you can add to it. And then do a little sprinkling of cardamom. Just like that. And then we've got our honey here. And then just drizzle a little bit of that on top. Oh, that's fun. And really, I mean, frankly, I've used this for entertaining many times, and it's always a really big hit. And it's something a little different too. And these products are always available all year round, so you don't really have to worry about season. But yeah, look at that. Isn't that great? See, you can impress your friends. Yay. So let's see, we do have some questions here. Let's see what we've got. Could you please describe other Nicasio Valley cheeses? Well, we certainly can. We don't have them all here, and we also have lost Rick for the moment. But the other one that we carry is the Nicasio Valley Square, which is very, very pungent. It's made in a Taleggio style, which is a washed rind cheese. Very, very meaty, very stinky. If you're into stinky, smelly cheeses, that one is right up your alley. But the flavor of it is not like as super stinky and overpowering as the actual scent. And there are some cheeses out there where you do have to get past the smell in order to enjoy the flavor. This is definitely one of them, but it is, again, really fantastic. The quality is wonderful. And if you like washed rind cheeses, and what that means is a cheese that is bathed in a brine, and then it develops a bacteria that's called Brevibacterium linens. And it's kind of like this orangish color, and it also creates that smell. And fun fact, it is actually, the bacteria is related to the same bacteria that causes foot odor. So when somebody says that cheese, stinky cheese smells like stinky feet, there's a reason for that. But I guarantee you this cheese is a lot tastier. Let's see here. Foggy, let's see. Let's see. I was intrigued when you mentioned you could pair it with pasta. This does sound like it's another question for Rick, but I would say, because I've never used the foggy morning with pasta before, but I would say at the end when you cook the pasta, almost like the sauce, you could fold it into the pasta and it would make for a really nice, rich sauce. I would also say, like, if you were making a cream sauce, like an Alfredo or something like that, again, at the end of making the base of your sauce, maybe put like half a wheel in there and take it off the heat. Whenever you're adding dairy to a cream sauce, take it off the heat before adding it to it, because you don't want to burn it. That's a lot of information there. This all of a sudden it's turned into a cooking show. But yeah, at the end, when you're adding cheese, into the sauce, turn off the burner and add the cheese at the end and stir it in. And also, don't use pre-shredded cheese when you're making sauces. Always get a full chunk, because shredded cheeses typically have a non-caking agent in it, so it's not going to melt into the sauce. So you've learned something today. Let's see here. Another question. What percentage of the milk at Nicasio Valley is used for production? We're going to have to email you that one since we've lost Rick. So I will make note of that, Michael, and I will make sure that he emails us about that. Favorite items? Yes, I can. So again, the Pinot cherries, this is one of my favorite products that we have, because it is actually quite versatile, and they're cherries that have been macerated in Pinot Noir. And they pair really beautifully with the foggy morning. They actually probably go really well with the Tomino too, which, two juxtapositioning cheeses. But again, there are multiple ways that you can serve these. Again, you could just put them on the side in a little bowl with some toothpicks, and then just add them on top of the cheese, or you could chop them up and then just put them on top of the foggy morning. That works too. That's a great way to entertain, and so people can just take as they go. And again, like I had mentioned before, they're also really good in Manhattans. You just stick one on a little toothpick and shove it in your drink. So that's great. The Columbus prosciutto would pair actually it pairs very well with everything, but the Tomino with that meatiness together, that's an A1 combination. The meaty mushroominess, and then you've got the salt from the prosciutto. That's always really lovely. And then of course the panforte, yeah, actually the one question I do get is like, how do you serve this? And how you serve it is you just cut it up into little slices, just like bread, and just serve it alongside. And again, these would all go beautifully with these cheeses, and that's why I paired everything together like this today. Are tours available in Nicasio Valley Cheese? So under normal circumstance, I know the answer to this question because I did it. Under normal circumstances, yes. You do have to contact them beforehand, and you can take a tour of the farm and the dairy and the cheese making facilities. Now, there's the shop in Nicasio Valley that you can buy the cheese from, and then they also have this big window where you can see the cheese making going on if you're lucky. And it's really cool. And actually in 2019, Michelle, who's the Greenberry cheese lady, she and I actually had the opportunity to go and visit their entire farm, and the cheese making facilities are so cool. We got to see how they make it. We got to see how they age it. We went into the aging rooms, with the brining rooms. That was really super cool. And then Rick took us out to the dairy, and we got to see where the cows are milked. And as we were there, they're actually bringing in a herd to start getting milked. Because they milk in the early morning and they milk in the afternoon, which is my understanding. And then of course the farm itself is just so beautiful. It's just rolling hills of green. So yes, if you do get the opportunity in the future, when things do finally get back to normal, we can start hanging out with each other in a non-virtual manner. Yes, they do offer tours, and you can see the facilities. And again, it's totally fascinating. It was integral to me passing the certified cheese professional exam, because it actually put an idea of what is actually going on with all these terms that I was learning. So again, it's fantastic. How are we doing on time? Okay, we got 10 minutes. Do we have any other questions? I'm glad this was fun and informative, Joe Bear. Thank you. Well, I'm sorry that we lost Rick. We couldn't get him back. That's too bad. He just had to hang out with me. I hope that's not too bad. But yeah, we've got. I could call him. Should I get? Okay, we're gonna give Rick a call. That's what we're going to do. Yeah. Just bear with me. Oh, this is good. This always makes for fun entertainment. The things that we can do. Let's see here. Let's see. There we go. Let's see what happens. Oh, just speaker. Okay. All right. I don't have a fancy iPhone. I can't face. Hey, Rick, we lost you.
I don't know what. I lost you, and you froze up, and then it went up, and I've been trying to reconnect numerous times with no success. I don't know what I've done wrong.
Oh, I don't know. Well, it's okay. I have you held up to my microphone, so hopefully everybody can hear you.
Okay.
Maybe we'll get somebody, if somebody could say if they can hear him or not. But yeah, we actually did go to question of how much of your milk goes to cheese making versus out to just regular milk.
We use probably about 15% of our milk for making cheese, and the rest, of course, goes to clover. As we milk about 500 cows, we generate somewhere between 3,500 and 4,000 gallons of milk a day. So we use about, like I say, it depends on the day. It can be range from 400 gallons to 1,000 gallons. Just depends on the time of year and what's going on.
Well, very good. And then, sorry, was there something else you were going to say?
I was going to say that all the cheese, we have a 500-gallon vat, is how big it is. So all the cheese is very much hands-on. So we don't have the big vat capacities, and that's kind of conducive to making the cheeses that we do, because they're all kind of specialty type cheeses. So that's how we do it.
Oh, very good. And also, and I answered this question with like what normal circumstances are, but are you still offering tours, or what's the current situation with touring the farm and the facilities?
Yeah, right now all that's kind of on hold.
Yeah.
With the pandemic going on. Our creamery stores is open every day, and they can look in through a big picture window on the cheese making. If they come during the week, we usually make cheese at least Monday through Thursday. And any one of those days, if you're here between noon and 1 o'clock, you can see a lot of the activity that goes on. And then, of course, they can always look in any other time and see all the equipment, the vats and the molds and the trays and all the carts and all the different elements that go into making cheese. But yeah, so unfortunately right now, like I say, tours and that are on hold. Usually the staff that's working in the store is very knowledgeable about what we're doing. So if it's not too busy, they can usually give a pretty good description of what we're about.
Cool, awesome. But under normal circumstances, you guys do have tours of the facilities and the farm, correct?
Well, we don't really offer at this point. Hopefully somewhere down the road,
right.
Hopefully post-pandemic, we start that. We've never really offered tours to just the general public on a regular basis.
Just me,
we do
special.
Groups and stuff like that on with the reservation that's made well in advance.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. There you go. So there's your answer. Well, thank you. So I think we only have a few minutes left, so I was going to start wrapping up. Was there anything that you wanted to mention or plug? Any goings on with Nicasio Valley, or?
I'd like to just repeat that we're in part of one of the great, sustainable dairy regions of certainly the West Coast, if not the United States. And I think that there's many high quality cheesemakers here. And so I hope people, when they're considering their next cheese purchase, really look at the cheeses that are kind of right in their backyard, because I think they're as good as you're going to find anywhere, certainly in the United States. So,
well, awesome.
We appreciate the opportunity to be a part of that.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being a part of this. I really appreciate it. I am going to let you go, and then I'm going to go over some stuff with our audience too, because we've got other cheese events coming up, and we also have the Nicasio cheeses on ad for through the beginning of February. So yeah, I'm going to go over all that with them. So thank you, Rick.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chelsea.
All
Bye,
right.
everybody.
Okay. Bye. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, for bearing with me and bearing with our technical difficulties. But yeah, so hopefully you enjoyed this tasting. And like I said, if there are any of the cheeses that you really liked in particular, we have all of our Nicasio Valley cheeses that we carry on ad through the first week of February. So yeah, so please come on in, take advantage of that. Also the Nicasio Valley Square that I had mentioned before, if you want to try their stinky cheese, you can try it at a discounted price. So that's always a good thing. And then in February, we have another cheese event. It is going to be on February 11th. It's already up on our website. You just go to molliestones.com/events, and you'll see you can register for the event, and you can purchase the cheese kit, and you can also purchase wines to go with it, because Carrie Kirkham, who is the wine manager at Sausalito, she is my department neighbor. Her aisle is right next to my department. We are going to get together and we are going to do Valentine's Day wine and cheese pairings. So I picked out a selection of cheeses. She's got a selection of wines to pair with them, and we're going to have a lot of fun with that. So please join us for that. And then in addition to that, the day after, there's also another wine event let's see, I know I wrote it down on here. Let's see here. It's Schramsberg Vineyards. She's got, I think, 3 sparkling wines they're going to be trying. So you can also sign up for that the day after too. So there's a lot going on in February. This is very, very exciting. So yeah. And again, thank you so much for joining me today. And Rick, I'm so glad you got to taste all the cheeses and participate. This is a lot of fun. I'm so glad I'm able to use the experience room for what its intended use is supposed to be, even though you can't be here with me in person. Someday you will be, but until then, we will just be broadcasting to you from here. So again, thank you very much. Thank you to Tim, our IT director, for handling all the technical stuff. And then also thank you to our marketing team, Erica and Danny. They've put together some really beautiful flyers and they've helped me, get the word out. So again, tell your friends and your family. Yeah, join us on February 11th. And I hope to see you again. All right. Have a good night. Bye.